Hello, welcome back to a very special episode of Properly Freelance. We are in between series, but I have finally found a time to sit down with the lovely Andry Anastasiou. Am I saying your name right, Andry?
Anastasiou.
Anastasiou.
It's nearly there, though.
The lovely Andry Anastasiou.
Great.
Who I was trying to pin down for series one and we never quite managed to come together. So we thought we would take the opportunity to record a little special, which I'm excited about. And what we're going to be talking about today is all about investing in ourselves as freelancers, which is something that I really struggle to do and that Andry specialises in. So hopefully I'm going to be picking up lots of tips from you today, Andry. Before we kind of go into talking about that topic, do you want to just say a little bit about what you do as a freelancer and how you have come to be doing that, so we've got some context?
Yeah, great. Thank you for this opportunity. It's great to speak with you. So yes, I run a small company called The Learning Moment, and I help people to learn, especially people in organisations, and sometimes I also help freelancers. I work with people using group workshops or one-to-one or team coaching or learning consultancy. I help people to experience the kinds of changes that they need to do their job or their role effectively and happily. So that might be improving their ability to handle conflict with a business partner or a client, or it might be helping an organisation to set up a learning programme like a mentoring scheme. So I did set up 2 mentoring schemes in the last 2 years, sort of letting those roll and then evaluating what people are learning. Or maybe working with managers or directors of companies to help them to see how to lead a team and perhaps be more hands-on or more hands-off, whatever it is that they're looking for.
So it's got quite a big spread, hasn't it, what you do, from kind of individuals learning things that are very useful for them to change the ways that they work, but right through to kind of organisational change. That's a really sort of strong message that I've gotten from the conversations that we've had around your work, which I think is really valuable actually, to understand how there are things we can do at all these different levels to kind of make our working lives better and make our organisations do the things that we want them to do better. So how did you end up setting that up, can I ask? Because it's your company, The Learning Moment, is that right?
It's my company. There's 3 of us. There's myself and Penny, our PA, and Miranda is one of my facilitators. And how did we end up setting up? I had a life-changing year.
How long ago was this?
So, I mean, I've been freelance part-time for 17 years, but then 8 years ago, I had a life-changing year.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a part-time senior lecturer and teacher trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And within 6 weeks, I lost my 2 salaried jobs and I lost my voice.
Wow.
Yeah, I lost my voice and I was in the tunnel of fear, as I call it, not really knowing what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And an organisation offered me a role, one of the organisations that I had been made redundant from, that sort of language that they use.
Yeah.
And I just thought, absolutely not. I'm absolutely not doing that. And what's really calling me is freelance, and can I do it? And so I sat down with a coach, a career coach, and I mapped out every single contact I had and connection, and I felt so resourced from that conversation, and I knew I could survive, even though it was the beginning of the recession.
Yeah, that would have been really, to about 2010 kind of.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was a crazy time, and within a year, all of those contacts had disappeared.
Wow.
And so I really had to learn about, surviving.
You started right at the bottom, I guess.
I did.
Yeah.
Every single contract I had disappeared, every connection, every organisation I was working with closed down, and that was a life-changing year. And so I set up full-time freelance at the beginning of the recession, and I survived it, and then we began thriving, which was great.
Yeah. And 8 years
So
later,
8 years
here you
later, it's
are.
really great, and I'm
Company
really
going
loving it.
strong.
Yeah, and we rebranded and renamed as the Learning Moment about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that came out of lots of journeys of, really thinking about what happens when you're wanting a specific change, when you're going through curiosity and discovery and you're exploring, and then you have that aha moment where you go, oh, that's the thing I need to remember.
That's the thing that's going to change everything.
And that
Yeah.
we talked about that with my PA Penny, and came to that conclusion that was the learning moment.
So that's what it refers to, the learning moment, is the
Yeah,
kind of aha.
that aha moment where you go, oh, right.
Okay, I learned something as well. So my next question that I'd written down is for you to tell me why you're so passionate about this topic, but I kind of feel like I know part of the answer already because, the topic of investing in training in yourself or in your organisation is what you do for a living. Like, obviously you're passionate about it because it's what your company does.
I think so. And I think more than that as well, I really feel like one of the things that keeps you happy and healthy is discovery. And discovery is really underrated for adults. It's like you're in school, and if you're lucky and you've got a great school, you get to experience curiosity and discovery. At the worst, you get to experience rote learning, and you're in learning full time, and you're in discovery, and hopefully you're in curiosity. And then all of a sudden in your adult life, you're meant to be in work, and discovery takes a back seat. And actually, what I think is, and what I've personally experienced is, if you stay curious and you keep discovering and you keep learning and you keep exploring, life is just infinitely more interesting, whether it's formal learning or informal. And I think that is just fantastic because it brings colour to life, and it brings something really special to work.
Yeah.
And you've always got something exciting going on outside of work because you're always interested in learning something new.
Yeah. And it is interesting that I guess you're applying that within contexts where, a lot of us probably feel that some of the things we do or have to do for a living are quite boring. Like, some of the kind of organisations you probably work with are doing work that on the surface must feel very dry. But you're managing to find that joy of discovery kind of within that. Because I mean, I work as much as I can. I work within theatre and the arts, and actually, yeah, we do have it's almost like an unspoken rule that it's all about, play and discovery and creativity. And I think sometimes I turn my nose up a little bit at all the buzzwords around trying to do that within a different context.
Okay.
But I'd really like to poke at that a little bit more today, because I think some of the things that you said you'd like to talk about, things like coaching, mentoring, all of that stuff, I think my natural reaction to some of those things is to go, oh, I don't want to get into that. But then lots of people I actually have met who've experienced those things have really benefited from them. So I think, yeah, this could be quite an interesting discussion.
Well, I have some great questions for you.
Oh, do you have questions for me? Brilliant. That's great.
I thought we could do a nice two-way bit of a conversation if that works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. What questions you got for me?
Well, when was the last time you were really interested or engaged in learning something that gave you that buzz?
So I think I am lucky that I do get to do things that do give me that kind of buzz of discovery relatively often still. 3 months ago, I did a kind of like a refresher course, if you like, in audio description, which is one of the things that I do as part of my portfolio. Audio description, for anyone that is not familiar with it, is basically a way of creating accessible routes into any kind of medium. But for me, I mostly do it in theatre and occasionally for screen as well, for visually impaired people. So I'll be writing scripts to to fill in the blanks, if you like, that people might experience if they can't see everything that's going on, and that's usually then delivered by a headset or sometimes as part of a live performance. And I did a refresher course in that about 3 months ago, which I found really great, because I think even though in theory everything that was contained in that as a course was things I had been told before and learned before, I think there's something really healthy about getting in a room with other people who maybe some people had done more of it than I had, some people had done less, but just by being in that room and sort of us all teaching each other from our experiences, we came up actually the things I found most interesting about it were the things where we disagreed about the best way to do it.
Okay.
And I like that because it keeps the whole topic alive. Sometimes when you work on your own, it's very easy to think, oh, I might be doing this, that, or the other wrong, or I might have forgotten things. But when you're in a room with other people and you realise there's 6 different opinions about the best way to do something, then it kind of, for me, that made me realise there's not a right or wrong way to do this particular part of it, but I need to feel confident in my convictions of the way I've chosen to do it.
Absolutely.
And be clear about why I've chosen to do it that way. So that was really good, because I went from kind of feeling, oh God, I'm doing this on my own, I don't really know what I'm doing, to, oh yeah, I've been reminded of the reasons that I choose to do it like this. So that was really nice. And then actually,
Great.
about a month or so after that, I did a couple of nice projects which both kind of overlapped with each other, where I was working in the room with companies who were looking to integrate audio description into their scripts, and just having recently done a 3-day training course, that was all it was, I was able to go into that room feeling so much more confident and like, I know what I'm talking about. And it wasn't, the things I'd learned were not that tangible, but it just boosted me into, being able to go into those roles which I did recently, which were consultancy roles, which is lovely, because it's not, I don't do a lot of consultancy work, but I was able to sort of really feel like I deserved that title.
Great.
I've had a couple of nice little development experiences recently.
And I love that you're describing that, it was the interaction as well on the programme that really gave you something special, and it helped you to see and feel that confidence in yourself about what you were doing. And then it sounds like there's a real practical impact, as then you're able to kind of go, oh, I can own this title.
Yeah. And also when I went into that work context and maybe somebody else there raised a question, not to challenge what I was doing, but to say, oh, but what about such and such, I would be able to say, yes, I think that's really valid and I consider that, and I would be able to talk about the context of the training that I'd done, and kind of not feel defensive about having my way of suggesting something be done challenged, but be able to kind of incorporate that into what feels more like expertise, I guess. It's hard to talk about though, isn't it? It's
quite an abstract thing, actually, and I think one of the most challenging things around learning is to take, to explore what you're taking away, and to, describe that, I suppose, if you need to, it in a way which is quite concrete.
How do you put it on your CV? It's just, I struggle with this a lot, Some people will look at your CV and just see you did some training and that's great, but when you actually try to crystallize what it is that you learned and took away, I think for me, often with formalized courses, especially because I work in the arts, and a lot of what I might want to learn is quite intangible. It's more about confidence, and kind of overcoming imposter syndrome, which is something I've talked about to death on this podcast. Just to kind of give yourself that boost of confidence a lot of the time.
And I think as a freelancer as well, there's something else that strikes me, especially if you're providing a service, you're often the expert. And when you go on a learning program of some kind, formal or informal, what you can experience is being the beginner, or being around someone who's facilitating, who's maybe a bit more of an expert. And that's great because it puts you in the position that your clients are often in, where they're lesser expert than you. And it really helps you to see and experience what they might experience. Like, what is it like when someone uses lots of jargon and you have to keep asking for it to be unpacked? And then you go, oh, okay, so I need to not be doing that with my clients. I need to be maybe a bit more jargon free.
Yeah.
And what is it like to feel uncomfortable that you don't know something? You know, your clients might feel that, and there might be a little bit of discomfort that they have where they're like, oh, I don't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it really gives you that perspective that some of your clients might feel, where they are less expert, where they're looking to you as the expert for the service. And I think that's really useful because being in business is often about positioning yourself as, you know, the freelancer. You know, I'm the facilitator, I'm the coach, I'm the consultant, for example, and then positioning yourself in your clients' different perspectives and going, what does it look like from their perspective? And that's one of the things that makes you a really good person in business.
Yeah, and that's something that I guess I experience as well as someone who facilitates arts workshops. I participate in as many as I possibly can as well, because I want that experience of being a participant, because I enjoy it. But I have a lot of those moments where I go, oh yes, that's what it feels like when I make somebody stand there with their arm in the air for 5 minutes. It hurts, you know, or that's what it feels like when I'm not being clear, or that's what it's like to have to wait around for half an hour while somebody else is doing something in your workshop. It's very healthy, I think, to be on that other side of things.
And you are also, I suppose, as a freelancer, you are also your own boss, your own line manager in a way. And I suppose if you were in an organisation of some significant size who cared about your learning and your development, they would invest time and money into keeping your skills up to date and making sure you are ahead of the game in terms of your expertise, making sure basically you're as well-rounded as possible to be able to do the job.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, when you go freelance, what I see is that sometimes people stop investing in themselves, and actually it's a blind spot if you don't invest in yourself.
Well, you just said the M word, money, and I think this is a big part of it. You know, certainly for me, having been a freelancer who's working in industries where there's just so little money and you're really, you know, earning so little, the idea of paying to go on training is something that is, you know, quite a challenge a lot of the time. When you think, usually when I look at a training course, it can easily cost, you know, a day's training could easily cost me a day's what I could earn in a day. Plus I'm having to take a day off from working in order to do the training. So it, you know, it really feels like I'm losing money if I do this. And it's, you know, I don't do a lot of training which I have to sort of pay and invest money in. I have done a few things over the years, but I have to feel so confident that that thing is, you know, really the thing I want to do, especially with having a sort of portfolio of work that I'm doing. You know, that I could be doing a training course for each of my different strands of work every month if I wanted, and then I have no time or money left to actually earn money. So, you know, that feels like a bit of a juggle of, what do I choose? I'm lucky. So, for example, the course that I just did, I was talking about the audio description course, that was free.
Great.
So I took, you know, I took 3 days out of work to do it. It was provided by a company who I do a lot of work for. And there's actually this slightly odd thing that happens. It's, you know, it's all about the psychology of it. But actually, as a freelancer, when you do a lot of work for a particular company and it's relatively low paid work, you know, sometimes I even think, well, that company should be paying for me to do this training because it enhances my skills in the work that I do for them. So actually in this instance I was willing to do it because it was free and they actually paid for travel and lunches and that kind of
great.
thing. And it does enhance my skills in the work I do for them, but it also enhances my ability to do that work as a freelancer for other people. And that particular work I do, for myself very often, as well as through that company. But it is that difficult thing of, like you were saying, kind of trying to compare your situation to, if you were working for a company, they would invest in you. When you work for yourself, it's no different. You need to invest in yourself.
You are your own boss,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't, if you were line managing someone, you would be deficient in your leadership if you didn't invest in them in terms of their learning. And investing means those things that you've described. It's like time, money, energy. Yeah. And I suppose some of the ways that, we help to make decisions around whether some learning is worthwhile, there's that scale of sort of how necessary is this versus how much do I just want this. There's the need versus the want scale. And I think and sometimes, as a freelancer, something is an absolute need. And in emotional intelligence learning, they often say, building on your strengths is a way to, for example, in relationship building, if you build on your strengths, like you're really good at rapport, and you build on that, then you come across as more authentic. And I think in learning, you have to invest some time in building on your strengths, because things change. Your service changes, and what's new, not so much what's on trend, but what's new that's really valuable. So in coaching, for example, what's been new for the last 10 years, which is a long time, so it's not really new, but it still is, because it's right up there, is neuroscience and coaching, and how we change habits. And so, fundamental work around neuroscience that shows that, if you really want to change a habit and embed a new neural pathway so that a habit becomes an unconscious way of being, you have to do 60 days of practice every single day.
So I'd love to talk about coaching, actually. So you mentioned to me that you've had a coach for a long time.
Yeah, I've
Do you
had
also
different
call
coaches.
yourself a coach in some context?
Yeah, so I'm a workplace coach and what they call executive and management coach. I mean, it's lots of different titles, but basically most of my coaching is coaching people around workplace issues or workplace goals. So a typical thing is I worked with an organisation, and they had internally promoted managers every year. So someone who works in the organisation and they get promoted to a more senior role, so they get a new team, they've got new challenges. And we use the coaching to help those managers to hit the ground running, and they often might be in a team with lots of challenges or who've just been restructured and new staff. So the coaching was provided to help the managers get from A to B faster and more supportively. So that's an example of workplace coaching, and it was such a great result, and we ran some skills sessions alongside it, so coming in as an expert, which is very different from coaching, where you discover your own expertise in coaching.
So what type of coaching is the coaching that you've been a recipient of?
Oh gosh, lots, really. I mean, I absolutely love coaching, because I think it is, for me, it's about life-changing conversations through connection with that person, and a conversation that resources you, that gives you that inner resource to go, I can do this, I know how to do this, and I've identified the small steps I can take, and I'm going to take them now. That's what you want to leave each conversation feeling and taking away. And so I've had one specific coach before the word coaching was around.
It feels to me like it's something that I've heard so much more about in the last maybe 2-3 years than ever before that, but it's perhaps because it's got a new name rather than because it's not been a thing.
That's
for all
right.
that time.
And I started with one coach 25 years ago.
What was it called then?
we just really call it anything.
Just
We were
had
just
nice
having it.
conversations.
We were having conversations,
Yeah.
focused conversations, and then I think we might have called it a bit of mentoring, where she was a little bit the expert. And then all of a sudden, this word coaching was beginning to emerge from the States.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
began to call it that. And then I've had various career coaches. So as I said, when I decided to go properly freelance in the language that you're using, I had a career coach for 6 sessions.
Yeah.
I've also had various coaches to help me with certain stages of my life. So, when I was training in coaching and mentoring, I had a different coach to help me then.
Yeah.
And so I've invested in coaching for career, for learning, for life.
Yeah. So I guess something that I'm interested in is how to what extent do you have to have already identified your problems, I say in inverted commas, in order to benefit from the coach? Because I've never used a coach, and I think part of what concerns me is that there's all sorts of things that I'm sure could be better about my work and my life or my career, but I feel like I would just go in and splurge a big mess all over them, and sort of, I guess that's their job, isn't it, is to help you to narrow it down to the more key things you want to change. But do you sort of need to go in already knowing to an extent what it is that coaching is going to focus on?
So let me just go back one step and just explain a little bit, I think, the difference between coaching, mentoring and counselling. That might be useful,
that'd be
just to
really
kind
helpful.
of set that.
This is probably
framing.
a key part of it, because sometimes when I think, oh, a coach could help me with this, probably what I really need is a counsellor.
Yeah, okay.
A therapist.
So, yeah, and there's quite a distinction. So the core skills are similar. So in coaching, you would expect to experience a non-judgmental listening space that helps you to move forward in your life. And you would expect that in mentoring, and you would expect that in counselling or therapy. I suppose the difference with the counselling and therapy on the one side and coaching and the mentoring on the other side is that counselling and therapy tends to deal with long-term past issues which might go back to childhood, for example, and tends to be, I mean, it's odd language to use, but perhaps a problem based or trauma based model. In other words, there has to be a real challenge or problem or issue or difficulty for you to want or need that service. Coaching and mentoring is not a problem or trauma based model. Things can be going really well, but you have a new responsibility or a new goal. So it's not a problem as such. It's like, I want to get from A to B, and I want some support and guidance and someone to help me to clarify what's going on in my mind and help me to see the wood for the trees. And so you can access coaching or mentoring when things are going really well or when there's a difficulty. And I think that's a significant difference.
Yeah.
And another significant difference is that you can leave the counselling or therapy, for example, having experienced the listening space, that beautiful non-judgmental listening space, but without an agreement between you and the counsellor or therapist that you will take any significant steps.
Sure.
Whereas in coaching or mentoring, you generally leave each conversation with a conversation at the end about, and what will you do now?
So it's proactive.
Yes, so there's this balance of reflection and action. You're reflecting in the session and you're closing the session with small steps for change, and you're going away and you're carrying out an action and you're coming back to the session, and you might do a check-in and a review about what did you experiment with, what actions did you carry out, what impact was there.
Okay, so to rephrase my question slightly then,
Okay.
if coaching and mentoring is more sort of about working towards goals and that kind of thing, do I need to know exactly what my goals are before I can benefit from coaching?
So most people come to coaching or mentoring. So just to say, mentoring being someone with more expertise than
Hmm.
you in a significant area, where the mentor is the expert, and coaching builds on the premise that the coachee, the person being coached, is the expert, and I'm helping them
Mm.
to find their expertise.
But you may not have expertise in that same field yourself.
Yeah, like I coach, for example, in conservation organisations with
Mm.
people who have PhDs in conservation. I don't
Sure.
know about conservation, but I do really know about helping people to discover their inner expertise and their inner
Yeah.
wisdom.
Yeah. Sure.
Whereas if I was a mentor in conservation, I would need to have more expertise in an area related
Yeah.
to conservation, for
Sure. Yeah,
example.
that's helpful.
So, when you're coming to coaching, most people, in my experience, come with a vague sense about what they want
Mm.
or about what's maybe a current challenge.
Mm.
Quite often, it's not very clear.
Mm.
Like, for example, if I'm career coaching, people will say, well, I need a bit of support. I'm feeling a little bit like I've got itchy feet. I kind of got that sense,
Mm.
itchy feet by I want to have a change in my career, but I don't know what it is.
Mm. Yeah.
So the goal can be very unclear.
Yeah.
Other times people come with absolute clarity. They might say, I need to manage this particular challenge. For example, I'm pitching at board level and I get really nervous and I've got to work out how to do that.
Yeah, so
Great.
that's a very
Okay.
tangible
That's
thing to
very
work on.
tangible.
Yeah, but
Other
you can
times
potentially work with somebody who's
you can work
needs
with
more help
somebody.
to identify their
Yeah,
own.
and I think a big part of coaching is helping you to identify where it is you want to get to clearly,
Mm.
what it is that you want.
Yeah.
And, we ask a question in solutions focused coaching, which is, what one thing do I want to take away from this process?
Mm.
And then each conversation, we ask, what one thing do I want to take away from this conversation? And it's a way of focusing the conversation because, you know, coaching is an investment in your time and your money. So you want it to be focused
Yeah.
on something.
Yeah, you need to know what it will achieve.
And so the
Yeah.
coach's job is to help you focus
Yeah.
on what you want as well as how to get there.
Mm.
So I really don't think it matters if you turn up unclear and
Yeah.
splurge, as you say.
Yeah.
And many people splurge for a session
Yeah. And
because
then you have
that,
time to work on it together.
yeah, and quite often you have to get that stuff out verbally
Yeah.
before you can see your sense of direction, see the
Yeah.
wood for the trees, or go, oh, now I know what I actually want to focus on.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So let's have that space and that permission to have that space,
Yeah.
knowing as a coach, I have the confidence that that process will bring focus because
Yeah.
I've seen that happen so many times.
Yeah.
And so I trust that.
This is definitely starting to chip away at the reasons why maybe I wouldn't have gone for something like this in the past, but I feel more and more like it would be beneficial to me. I actually just finished reading a book called Playing Big by Tara Mohr, which was recommended to me by Sarah Weiler in the very first episode of the podcast. Um, and
You
I
mentioned
was
it
I
the
was
other day,
wondering I
yeah.
was wondering about doing an episode on kind of miracle fixes and self-help books and all of that stuff, because again, this is an area which I can feel that I've shied away from. I think partly it's because there's so much information out there, and I also feel like the last year or so there's so many coaches out there. It's just like everyone's doing it, and that makes me feel like, oh god, how can all these people possibly know what I want in my life? But the thing that really did resonate with me about the Tara Mohr book, which I loved, by the way, was she talks a lot about the inner mentor, and turning to your inner mentor and like asking what your inner mentor is. This kind of vision that you have of possibly yourself in the future, or this imagined person who knows what you should do now, and who you can just ask. They're sort of like your imaginary friend, I guess.
Yeah.
But I found it a very powerful image, this idea of talking and asking advice from this inner mentor. What's nice about that, it connects to this idea that as a coach, you are helping somebody to bring out their inner expert, actually, and saying that person's already there. But it also made me feel more like I could see the value of some kind of one-to-one conversation with a real other person,
Great.
in order to help bring out some of those things.
That's really interesting, the concept that you're talking about, like discovering your expert within, is very common to coaching.
Mm.
As I was saying before, it's really built on this assumption that the coachee is the expert.
Mm.
And as a coach, for example, I would come to each conversation holding, on the one hand, the expertise that I have, and on the other hand, what we call beginner mind. So, beginner mind is I hold my expertise lightly on the one hand, and on the other hand, I come with curiosity, discovery, openness.
Mm.
So, in each conversation that you have when you're coaching, somebody turns up who you know some things about, maybe, and you know other areas you know absolutely nothing about. And if you come with beginner mind, it's amazing. You can
Mm.
have synergy in the conversation, and that aha moment, that learning moment happens.
Mm.
In the same way, if you're talking about discovering your inner mentor, that's like your inner expertise. And then in other situations, you can bring the beginner mindset to it, where you're like, I don't know anything about this, and I'm going to look out there for expertise. So there's that balance of
Mm.
I've got my inner expertise and I'm going to have my beginner mindset, which I think is really useful in any learning. If you're investing in yourself, it's really useful to keep that balance in mind. If you're going on a new course, for example, and you might know some things about it. So, for example, I did an incredible program a few years ago called ULab with MIT. It was a MOOC, massive open online course,
Yeah.
and it was free. And I walked into the room, and there was this palpable energy in the room. There was like a buzz, and I just thought immediately, I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the ways I make decisions about what I want to learn. It's like, what was that energy like in the room when I walked in?
Yeah.
And some of the issues that we were covering on ULab were to do with, co-creating collaborative change. And some of the things were not new for me. So I'm there and I'm meeting, topics that I know about. And then other things are completely new, and I'm bringing openness to it. But what I find very useful is, even when I have expertise, if I come with that beginner mind, hey, I'm here to learn.
Yeah.
Even if I'm relearning my baby steps, those ABCs of stuff that I know about, mindfulness, learning the ABCs of that,
Yeah.
collaboration, learning the ABCs of that, then I can have an interesting and an exciting time. And in fact, ULab led to my best two projects, which was facilitating a version of ULab with my dream team here at Impact Hub, which was incredible. 9-month process. And it led to me and two other facilitators, one based in Australia and another one based in the UK, collaborating on a global project with 10 cities in the world, helping them to bring about change.
That's absolutely amazing, isn't it? And I think what you're saying about how open you had to be at the beginning of that in order for that positive impact to come about is so true, because I, had a little bit of involvement in ULab as well. And some of the language around it is just like terrifying, really, but you were open to it, and you took from it what you could, and you found the value within that, even though I think I probably shared that experience that you had, which was that some elements of it didn't feel new. They just, to me, felt like new words for things that I already knew. But it had been packaged together in a way that was really powerful. and yeah, so brilliant that it, ended up with you facilitating these global projects and using
Absolutely.
those
It was
tools. So
incredible. And for me,
yeah.
it was those things that I look for when I'm making a decision about what I want to invest in. So, you know, either on that scale of like, how necessary is this? How much do I need this? Or how much do I want this?
Mm.
What's the buzz like? What's the connection like with that person or that program or the introductory day?
Yeah.
And
And that's actually an example of a a way of investing in yourself in terms of training that is very low on resources, because it's a free course to do.
absolutely.
It was run here on an evening, so you were unlikely to be missing out on work to do it, and it had reaped such brilliant rewards actually. So
Exactly. And I
yeah.
think that move towards MOOCs, massive open online courses, has been a way that learning has become more accessible for a lot of people as
Mm,
well.
yeah.
And there are really creative and interesting ways to learn. And I always encourage myself, and certainly in coaching, I open those conversations about learning, and we explore, how do you like to learn? Do you like face-to-face interaction?
Mm,
Are you okay with online? Do you like visual? Do you like auditory? In the same way that when you're coaching, some people love to take loads of notes. That helps them to learn and remember. Other people scribble diagrams. Some people take no notes at all. Some people like stories. Some people like data. It's
mm.
very different for every person. How we access learning, how we access coaching is very different for each person. I was laughing about this experience that I had where I was teaching a course, and it was on leadership and management.
Mhm.
And we were getting quite deep into the process, and we were looking at, leading yourself and moving beyond the superficial conversations. And someone arrived on the workshop, and they were a little bit late, and they went, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late." And they joined in. And at that moment, I couldn't catch them up in any one-to-one way. So we just kept going. And they were there for about 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden, we had a little pause, and they stood up and they said, "Oh, so this isn't existential philosophy then."
They were actually in the wrong room.
They're actually in the wrong room, but because we were so deep in the
Oh my God,
conversation,
that's brilliant.
they thought they belonged. And I
It
just
took them 45 minutes to work it out.
45 minutes to kind of go. And they were taking part, and they were listening, and they were watching, and
Oh
it was
God.
so lovely and so funny.
But isn't that brilliant that your work and all of those people's work can be such a great process of exploration and discovery that it feels like existential philosophy.
Exactly.
That's great.
And so, I found that really funny. I was like, gosh, we must have been working really deeply.
Yeah. I mean, that's hard work, isn't it? You can't be I feel like all this stuff is it's great and you need it, but you can't be doing it 5 days a week. You need your working
Absolutely.
life because you can't be doing it. I mean, I did a degree in philosophy and it was hard to do it,
Same here.
5 days a week. Did you?
Yeah, I did the
Oh, okay.
philosophy and literature degree.
Ah, there we
Yeah, as
go.
my first degree. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it makes you realise why this work is like draining of your energy and why you then have to look after yourself and invest in yourself in all those different ways.
Yeah, one of the things I want to say about learning is I think it's ideal if you have time to reflect afterwards and to digest the learning. But it's not always necessary. And sometimes you go on a course and then you have to hit the ground running really quickly. So about 5 years ago, I did a program called, was it 5 years ago? Yes, I did a program called Fierce Conversations, and it was about brave, robust conversations in the workplace.
Mm,
And I became a licensed facilitator. And then all of a sudden, I was out there delivering that workshop, hitting the ground running.
wow.
And sometimes I had so little time to reflect that I was planning on the train
Mm,
on the way up to the workshop. So it did work to put myself under that incredible pressure, but it's ideal if you can have a little bit of reflection
yeah.
time.
I mean, we actually have the freedom as freelancers, don't we, to say, right, I'm going to have half a day after that course to process my own learning. And I know from past experience in payroll jobs, that rarely happens because, you've taken 2 days out. We need you back in the office kind of thing. So I guess, it's just, again, it's about us managing our time and like valuing that investment and saying, right, it's worth another few hours because then there's time to process it.
Yeah. And so to kind of close, I would say really 3 things I would say is, if you were your own boss in an organisation, you would invest in yourself. So, take that idea. You are your own boss. It's important to invest in yourself. Secondly, your clients expect you to be ahead of the game in terms of your expertise or your product or your service.
And up to date.
What's
happening.
So stay up to date, do that through learning. And third thing I would say is, just follow that energy. If there's a nice connection or a buzz, that's a good place to learn.
So we are going to finish with my usual 2 little questions, which we can both answer.
Okay.
I will go first with the most ridiculous or annoying thing that's happened to me this week as a freelancer. So my ridiculous annoying thing was that we had the bank holiday and everyone was probably, well, actually it was really sunny, so most people were out sunbathing, but traditionally might have been doing a bit of a spring clean, that kind of thing. My spring clean consisted of cleaning my printer cartridges because my printer's been broken for about 4 months and it's not really broken, it's just refusing to do anything for one of those silly reasons that printers refuse to do anything. So I was determined. I got up on the bank holiday and I was determined that I was going to make the printer work. It's the kind of thing that I can't bring myself to spend time doing on a proper working day because there's not time when you need to get work done. And it took about 2 hours of just continually cleaning the ink cartridges, and it worked.
Yay.
So it was ridiculous, but ultimately satisfying because I managed to make it work. But just felt like, oh God, if only I had a printer engineer in my department of one, which I don't, sadly. Yeah. So has anything ridiculous happened to you this week?
Yeah, I think that the annoying thing, I suppose, for me is under the GDPR, there are some files which, for my best practice, I like to encrypt.
Yeah.
And so I had 30 files, and I discovered if I encrypt them as a group, then I can't actually change the file after. So I had to individually encrypt these 30 files with a password. And I was just doing it and I was thinking, I'm finding it really hard to get into a positive frame of mind about this.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just doing it. But I did have that sense at the end of absolutely being, having a high quality standard around the encryption.
Absolutely.
But annoying. Again, really.
If you had an IT department.
Yeah, exactly. If I had an IT department, they'd be doing it and they'd discover a really quick, snazzy way to be able to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure there is one. Brilliant. Okay. Final thing, something wonderful or sublime that's happened this week. So mine is actually related to those consultancy projects that I was talking about, where I was working with these 2 companies who wanted to put audio description into their shows. One of them was very successful, got some lovely reviews, including kind of some big mainstream theatre publications, and they actually reviewed the integrated audio description, and I got named in 2 theatre reviews, and I have never before heard. It probably has happened, but it's definitely not a run-of-the-mill thing for audio describers or consultants to be named in theatre reviews.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So this was like a massive victory for everyone involved.
Oh, that's so brilliant.
Yeah, I'm really happy about that.
Lovely.
What's the best thing that's happened to you this week?
It's interesting because it's been the long bank holiday weekend, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So we've had 4 days off, and I was thinking actually the best thing that's happened as a freelancer is actually taking 4 days off, which is so rare in freelancers' world.
Yeah.
So freelancers' world is normally like, I've got holidays, but there's something I need to do and there's no one else to do it, so I have to do that. So I'm just going to squeeze it in the morning on the first day off.
Yeah.
And
that's what I did.
So, yeah. So what I've learned is through years of working on work-life balance, self-care, productivity, I've learned 4 days off is actually sacred, and there is no work going to happen on those 4 days. So it was a mindset and a practice. I didn't do any work. I didn't email anybody. I didn't do anything practical to do with work. I didn't have conversations about things I was planning to work on.
And the sun
was
shone.
Beautiful. And the sun shone, and it was like summer in April. So that was a real achievement for me, and it was I had a wonderful time. I was on a picnic in Crystal Palace Park. I spent time with friends and family. I ate lovely food, and I had 4 blissful days off on holiday.
That sounds gorgeous. And it will take a little bit of time to edit this, but hopefully it will be going out in May, and there will still be 1 or 2 bank holidays to come. So we will try and communicate to all the other freelancers that you should really try and take that day off.
Absolutely, and learn that skill of actually taking a day off when there's one in the calendar. Like a work-free, productivity-free day. That's bliss.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much, Andry. It's been lovely to chat.
You're welcome. It's been
definitely
great.
Going to go away and think about coaching and developing myself and investing in myself.
Fantastic.
And let's go carry on enjoying the sunshine. I want to give you a little round of applause, but I don't normally do. Thank you, Andry.
Thanks for the opportunity. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to Properly Freelance with Jenni Elborn, and my guest was Andry Anastasiou from The Learning Moment. You can find them online at thelearningmoment.org. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please leave me a review on iTunes or tweet me on @properfreelance. You can also email properlyfreelance@gmail.com. Happy freelancing!